Hey everybody, welcome to another session of Control+M Presents. Thank you so much for joining us today. As a reminder to everybody on the call, you are all on mute, so when question time comes along at the end of the presentation, you'll need to remember to unmute yourself. We're on mute because we are recording so that we can put this on our YouTube channel. Today's topic is engineering change requests, also known as engineering change orders, engineering change notices, lots of different names, but what it really is controlling the rollout for requests to change a product that you either manufacture or that you sell or that you manufacture to sell, like a subassembly. Our Albie Bell is going to be doing this presentation. Most of you on this call know Albie as a passionate supporter of the Plex product and the Plex community. He joined us last year, and we couldn't be more delighted to have his knowledge, his energy, and his Plex passion on the team. So take it away, Albie, and have fun.
Thanks, Patty, for the introduction. And certainly, engineering change is one of the topics that I nerd out a little bit on in the Plex world, and have made numerous engineering change processes for people along the way, former employer, and have presented engineering change requests at PowerPlex several years back. So it's definitely a topic that I love. It's a huge topic because it integrates into lots of different spaces and things like that. So with that, we'll take a quick look at the agenda. We're going to talk about engineering change as a concept overall. We're going to take a look at the sample flow chart and its corresponding workflow, because certainly ECR is one of those spots where you can have an integrated workflow through the application, and it really helps drive the discipline there. We're going to look at types of changes, rollover versus concurrent. That's a important understanding of when you're changing your revisions, what happens to them. And we're going to look at the key parts of the ECR module in Plex. We're going to touch on the structure of it, some of the key features that I find super powerful inside of the ECR module, and we'll have time for questions at the end. Certainly, if you think of a question 4 seconds after you log out of the Zoom, my email is at the bottom of the slides, so feel free to reach out to me with questions and things like that. Or if you guys want to play around with your own ECR projects, we're certainly more than happy to help out. So engineering change, and I'm going to leave it as just engineering change, even though in Plex they talk about it's labeled engineering change requests. But I want to cause everybody to think larger on that the module can be used for the request side, the evaluation, what's going to happen if we make these changes, costs, bill of material changes, how long is this going to take? Do we need to play around with tooling? Do we need to get customer approval? All of those things of the what if scenario of making the change. Do we need to train people? Things like that. But it also can do the implementation side of the change process. And I think that the nomenclature of the module itself sometimes causes people to forget about that part, that it can help you walk through the change itself, what needs to be done, and we will take a look at that in the workflow and the flow chart that I have put together in our PCN to support that. So certainly remember that it can be both parts of the change process, the evaluation and the let's make it happen, things like that. So moving on from the not so exciting slide to a little bit more exciting slide. Um, always, always, always draw your picture first. Get the crayons out and map out what you want your change process to be before start playing in Plex and building the workflow. So taking a zoomed in look here, so we don't all have to have an eye chart. Um, the process that I've built, and certainly there's 10,000 millions of ways to build your own ECR process, but some of the basic concepts that I've included in this sample are a one piece about this. The colors do represent the status of the ECR in Plex as it works through the workflow. So color is important here on this chart, and it does represent the status of the change, which does control some of the behavior inside of Plex. So that is important to consider as we're going through here. So on the new side, we'll populate the ECR. What information does a person need to make a initial start of it? What are we changing? Who's doing it? That type of boilerplate activity. I've built in is it feasible? So if you pull from the AIAG institutes for the automotive side of standards, they're going to ask you, can it be made? Do I have the capacity? And things like that. You can build that into your workflow. So in this case, it's going to be a feasible, not feasible choice right off the bat before even people start populating their input information into the change. Does the purchasing team need to go talk to a supplier about an updated quote, get a tooling change? What's my inventory level? Are we have to scrap a bunch of things like that? It's got a voting section for do I want to approve it? Do I want to reject it and put it back to do we really need to continue on this? Is it a non-starter? Things like that. Or do I need more information back from a responsible party that is giving you input on that? Maybe somebody forgot to say, oh yeah, I got to update a drawing. You can have a feedback loop and go around the circle as many times as you need to. And then there's the customer approval down at the bottom. Yes, no, approved, before getting into creating revisions. And this is part of the implementation side that Plex has built into it on taking a part revision and making the next one. And what happened at this step, we will talk about in 2 slides. And then there's a possibility for implementation. How does that look? You could have 4,000 little actions here for implementing in your workflow, or you can build a big checklist and use a template for that before you reach down to the end here and celebrate that you're implemented the change, or you're complete, whatever your terminology is. But definitely take a look at what your process needs to be before you go and build your workflow inside of Plex. Certainly Plex is super powerful with its functionality in the workflow, but if you don't know what you want first, that makes it a little bit tricky to navigate in some of those ways. So if we take a zoomed in look here on the workflow, the statuses that were corresponding with the colors are at each of those levels, and the actions inside of the ECR step populate who's going to do that activity, how many people are required, all the way through there. And in this query column here, we'll spend a little bit of time looking at, when we're in Plex, the responsible party as an individual to take care of that activity on the to-do list there, if you will. All right, types of changes. So in Plex, you can have 2 main changes for changing a revision. You can have a rollover and you can have a concurrent. So rollover can be as scary as rolling your car over. So I want that to plant firmly in your mind, because Plex will take, let's say you're at revision A and you're rolling over to revision B. Everything about revision A becomes revision B when you generate the changes. So inventory changes, records change, control plan levels go from A to B, jobs change, basically the old revision becomes the new revision, and that original revision is changed. So good for fixing errors, really scary if you use it at the wrong moment and you've been shipping to your customer um, a revision for a couple of years and then you make a huge change. Everything just changed if you use the rollover. So uh, definitely be sure to control that kind of change. Concurrent is both exist at the same time. When you generate the change, Plex will take revision A and copy it into a new part and revision. So you have two completely separate entities of your revision. A and B, Plex will start with the routings and the BOM and copy them in, copy everything from one to the other, and allow you to start making those changes. If it's a drawing change, bill of materials, things like that, you have not a clean slate, but a copied slate and a starting point, and revision A is not going to change. So super important that that concept is understood, because don't roll your car over when you make an engineering change. So that's a key part. So go into Plex, and we're going to take a look at a number of spots here. So let's just jump to that right now. So jumping in, engineering change request has a gigantic filter and a tiny grid at the bottom to have a searchable function for changes. So if you're making lots of changes over your products, you can sort by any number of ways, from status to where you are in the workflow, who has some responsibility on that. So if you're looking for any change that has Bob on it and he needs to take stuff, or what things have Bob done for changes, you can look at that all the way. So that is a key function, but much like anything else, it's got an action bar and a filter and a grid, and it's going to show up to do that. So this is the first test that I did on the change, but we're going to go for broke and add a new change here right on the fly, because it's really not that heavy of a set of information to populate for that. So we're going to do that. So change in for the test today for Control+M Presents. I have almost everything turned on for the ECR. And as you can see, it's built off of a wizard page with sort of a sub menu on the side. These pages, you can turn them on and off based upon if you need them or not. Which order do you want them in? Your choice. But then there's a number of setup tables that are driving the type of change, a group, priority, reason codes, things like that, that you can customize to fit your business the best. So maybe you need it's a food change versus a beverage change versus process. However you classify your changes, those can be updated to do that. So I'm going to pick the old customer change here. You can pick a priority. Most PCNs, when they start out, only have critical changes. Hopefully some of your changes are actually at a normal pace throughout the life cycle. And you've got some fields for customer change numbers, dates that are targeting. So let's finish this today. Don't forget, you can use your plus minus arrows in the any date field in Plex to go up and down on what your date is. It's a easy keyboard feature that I have grown fond of. And we'll pick another date here. We'll go into 2019, just 2029, just for fun, and come down to the responsible party section. This is one of my favorite spots about ECR. They will allow a company to pick who are going to be included in your changes, and by which function, where do they show up in the workflow. So you can see in the product engineering, I've got ECR, ECO, and fees included at the end of it. These are so that you can use a filter in the workflow to say, give me everybody that is part of the ECR approval. So product engineering process, quality, you could certainly throw purchasing in there. Sales looks left out here at the bottom. So you can use that type of logic to filter where certain groups end up in the approval process there. These fields can also be selected based upon security roles. So the first handful here are just wide open lists of people. So throw myself in there for easy. But on the sales side, we currently have two people that have that security role that I've picked for the sales. I think it's our sales one. And so you can use it to limit who gets the possibility to be assigned there. So for workflow simplicity, I'm going to pick myself for all of them today. Here's the ECR status. It's going to drive some things in the workflow. There. So as we save the first ECR page, then you can jump into each of these others. We won't spend a whole lot of time on a lot of them. And this could be one of those spots if you have questions about particulars, can do that. But on the part side, this is really where the importance is. You've got to pick what you want to change. So take a look here. I have two of my test parts. One's got no revision. The next has revision A that I've changed. We're going to change revision A and we're going to make it something additional. You have the option to take a look at what BOM components are associated with it, where it's used to start that evaluation of what's going to change when we start making this engineering change. So you can set the change type and what happens here. So currently it's defaulted to concurrent, the safe one. And you can select what happens to the new part. So I'm going to pick revision B is what we're going to go to, that destination part, which status you want it to have, and what do you want to have happen to the old part. Let's put it into service for there. All right, so that part's saved. We now know that we're going to go to revision B. Maybe you want to add some notes about this. Dimension 42 was 4.3, 4.5 is 5.6 milliliters, because units are important. The effects page, this can be driven, this is driven based upon a setup table called workflow conditions and workflow condition groups. These items then you can use in conditional routing in your workflow, and you can also use it to collect information about the change. So if a drawing needs to be updated, you're going to check that box, and then somebody has to add a note here about the details that have been described in that item. So you can provide sort of tool tips and prompts to work through collecting information. So you can default things to be on. So are there, safety issues that need to be evaluated mandatorily based upon any change that's going on? That box can be defaulted, and I'm going to try and navigate away. Hey, I haven't typed my note. There are not issues. Here we go. Now I can move on. You can capture some cost estimates throughout here. This doesn't link to anything about part costing in the accounting side and the financial side. It is a repository for collecting information. Let's make sure we capture some important things there. And if you're getting some customer recovery, that's going to have a negative sign here to impact what is your overall total going to be in your change with that. If you've got buildings, you can play around with who's going to be impacted about which building on the change itself. So drive some notification of people. Tools can be included into your ECR. Let's search for our pencil. And then in the next slide there, you can decide what needs to happen with that tool. Does it need a revision stamp dropped into it? Does it need completely overhauled, or get to scrap it and build a new tool, or to sharpen your pencil? Things like that. You can collect that information. This is driven based upon the tool disposition setup table. On the slide, you can on a page, you can look at the inventory, what is happening here. I actually don't have any inventory of revision A. I had inventory of revision, no revision, but then you can assign what you want to do with those. So if you're going to exhaust it, contain it, scrap it all, cancel a bunch of orders, and then maybe I'll adjust the jobs. That just provides you indication of what might need to be some of the impact if you've got to write off all of that inventory, or tell the customer you need to buy it if you want to do a not a breakpoint change, but change it right off the bat, right? So just a communication tool, again, like the cost estimates. This isn't going to go and scrap your inventory automatically. That part you do need to do on your own inside the other parts of Plex, so that it's not as scary as, oh, I hit generate revisions and I just scrapped a bunch of stuff without having that timing worked out correctly. You can link some accounting jobs, PPAPs you can associate with both on the supplier side and the customer side if you have to change for the automotive realm. And you can then link any purchasing RFQs for parts that you need to change and buy from your supply base. And you can also link program iterations to your ECR. So if you're using this for new product development, releasing new parts, and you've got 15 new parts that are part of a program, you can link that here and track some of those things there. So those are the components of the ECR on the Wizard side. But let's take a look at the workflow and that implementation. And it has the reminders for fill out page 1, check on what might need to happen. So you can write this for your process as you need it, have various results accordingly for those, and it'll step through each of those workflow items, confirm if it's feasible or not feasible. You can change your choices accordingly with the workflow side. We're going to keep jumping forward. This one's going the smoothest ECR ever known to man. It's just getting approved and people are responding directly. All right, so now we're at the approval step for internal side. We've got a couple of choices here that per that flow chart, reject, approve, more information, and that would route it accordingly there. Again, let's keep moving forward flawlessly until we get to our customer approval. They're going to approve it. Approved all our cost increases. And now on to the ECR status of ECO revision create. This is where the change really starts becoming an implementation tool for your ECR. So we select here, we can double check on the change type. Now you have that choice. If you wanted to roll it over, you could. You can decide, confirm your choice for what you want the part A or revision A to be. Again, we wanted it to be service. You were creating a different part number, you can do that. And there, so we confirm those choices. Clicking OK, and then highlighting that row, you get the item to say generate change. Wizard Setup tables. There it is. So currently we've got part A and no revision of that part. Come back to the change, generating the change. Are you really sure? Yes, I am. Plex crunches about it for a second. Records are updated. Come back to the part list. And now I have revision B selected inside of here. The part status, I do have that set as a default in a setting that was overriding the drop down box so that you have a moment in time of deciding what happens. Maybe you have orders that you still have to play around with, but that could be either on the settings side or in that drop down that we were playing with before. But now you've got revision B that is a copy of revision A, and you can start adjusting all of those independently of your change of revision A, pardon me. So let's go back to the workflow. So we just generated our revisions. That part's complete. And then in the workflow, it is now at really the implementation phase where there's a check sheet, a checklist that is associated with that. So currently, that checklist is here. Take a look at the full list. You can make assignments for drawing review or drawing approval, do your work on your PPAP. This list can be as large as you want it to be and make assignments there inside your ECR. So it's going to take a completion date. And we're going to complete this workflow or checklist to complete. And now that that workflow item can be completed, there's some logic in there that says if the checklist is not completed and it's required, don't allow that to advance to the next item in the workflow. In the workflow itself, the next step after we've implemented is going to be completed. So we're going to finish that. And then we are going to come back and take a look at this ECR page. And we are now complete. And you can see that a lot of this stuff became grayed out to lock down that revision of your ECR. You're done with it. You're changed. It's not something that somebody's going to be able to go back and say, well, like really, we're going to change this behind the scenes and things like that. So the look at the setup tables that really are behind some of this. Anything that starts with ECR is going to drive some items that in the module type status revision type is where they roll over. Concurrent change is set up, reason, priority, group, cost function, title. This is where it allowed me to have the implementation party built into the cost file. Workflow condition will give you the conditions and the group. These will show up in a couple other modules as well, and it'll show up in the supplier purchase order if you needed to use something like this inside of your workflow, and where those are set up. Responsible party is the people side of that list. If it's going to be required, if you want it to show up in the filter in the grid of the ECR page, this is really what was making the filter huge on the entry point into ECR, because each one of these four shows up as a filterable item on that page, and where you can build in the filter side in the workflow itself. That's where those are going to be built. And then here in in the specials, the variable data that you're going to use for making the workflow correct, or it function the way you want, that is where that filter is picking the individuals who are listed as feasible, ECO, ECR, sales, or product. That is setting up their responsibility inside of your workflow. So for example, feasibility is being done by the special that has feasibility that is linked to the responsible party. Lost here. Responsible party that has feasibility as part of their responsible party. So that is the speedy tour through the ECR module itself. Certainly the switch back to the presentation. So we've jumped in and taken a look at the ECR as it's labeled in Plex, both as a request and an order module or notice module. Certainly there on the notice, there's tons of notifications that can be set up either in the workflow or other notices email wise there. Make your drawing first for sure on your change, and then the types of change, rollover versus concurrent. The workflow pages, we took a look at that. ECR effects labeled as your workflow conditions, the responsible parties, and then inside of the ECR status, and let's go back real quick because I failed to jump on that. Inside your ECR status, there is a flag that says records create allow, and that was the ability that gave us the generate revision button. That's the only time in the workflow that was going to show up, is in that that side. And then on the completed side, the lockdown docs, restrict supplier update, restrict internal updates. You can be supplier enabled with workflow as well on that side. So that is the list of what we've gone through in summary. And as you've been teased a couple times here, there's the question slide. Who's got questions? Remember, you're going to need to unmute yourself to ask questions. And there's my email address if you need to start jotting some things down. Want to reach out on the flip side. But are there any questions from anybody there?
If anyone doesn't feel comfortable verbalizing your question, you can always throw it in the chat and I can read it out to Albie as well. Got a couple of folks coming off mute, so good news.
This is Heidi. I had sent a message to Patty. Just one comment to make on the responsible party setup table. In UX, the sort order does not work correctly. It does not respect the sort order. So in our PCN, we only have 2 of the responsible party records that are required. The others are all based on what the ECR needs. And in Classic, we have them set as sort order 10 and 20. And it actually works in Classic, but in UX, the sort order only looks to the responsible party key, and it will not respect that. I've had a case open for about 1.5 years waiting for them to fix that because they've indicated it's a bug.
Oh, good times. That's a tricky find for sure, but
yeah,
it's a good catch.
So it's a pain in the butt because the 2 that we need are about 3/4 of the way down. So when you're doing your ECR, you have to search for the ones instead of finding the top 2 as you're required, because they have the little red asterisks as required. So you have to make sure that you're looking correctly for those.
Good tip.
Thanks, Heidi. We got another person off mute here.
Hey, Albie, it's Don.
Hey, Don.
Hey, so it looks like ECR is really focused on parts. Is there a way in this to do document work instruction control, revision control for that as well?
So the document side, certainly if we're going to build into DCS, that can have some document side there. There are a couple of flags inside of ECR for training and things like that, but for sure it's really geared towards parts and then the tooling that might be impacted based upon those. You could use some of the workflow conditions on the effects page to say, I'm going to check the box and say, yes, we have documents that are also changing. They are going from this to that type of thing could be included. And then that could drive a step in the workflow, an action to say, all right, yes, that box is checked. Have somebody do the work in DCS to update those documentations. So you can tie them together, but it's a little bit of a looser tie together than here are the documents that are changing directly.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions for Albie?
I do have a question. Hi, Albie. This is Daisy at Richmond Baking.
Hello.
I know you showed a tool and tool disposition. We work with tools, but we also do a lot more with machinery, like equipment replacement. Is that something that this particular module is capable of to link that information to the equipment list?
There is not an equipment page for ECR similar to the DCS side. A checkbox in the effects page could tie that together. There is a setting that shows up on the main page for work center to show up that might be helpful if it's a piece of equipment that's linked directly to one work center, similar to the cost and the so the page I was thinking of there, the inventory side, there's not a direct, hey, I'm going to roll the revision level of the equipment at that point. But you can drive some workflow action based upon the effects table.
Okay, thank you.
Albie, we got two questions in the chat from Jasmine. We are switching to UX, and one of our main issues in Classic is that we can't assign a person to the task, only the department or group. Can we assign individuals, although multiple people are included in the group? For example, sales. There's only 3 account managers, but she just wants one to get the task. Is that possible?
So there's a couple of options that we have that are there on the workflow actions. You can assign responsibility directly to one user. You can assign it to a group of people and say one out of the group or many out of the group or all out of the group. So that when I say is a group, it's the module in Plex that is Teams group where you can say sales department and then add additional users inside that have sales responsibility. You can also do the same with security roles for that on the workflow step. And you can assign it to a special, which was the functionality that I was using inside of the responsible party section. When you select your responsible party on page 1 of your ECR, you can limit who shows up for each of those responsible parties based upon a security role. So there are a couple of ways that might be done in that way. So responsible party will allow you to pick one person directly and have that person do that. So if your 3 salespeople have the same security role, then when you fill out page 1 of your ECR, you can say Bob's getting this one to do that. Hopefully that helps.
Albie, we got another one in the chat. How do you get the workflow to not proceed until the checklist was completed?
So that is a checkbox that is on the workflow action and check. Let's just jump here real quick. Workflow is here. So this, can't remember which step I'm looking at right now. Engineering change is feasible. You're going to select which of your checklist templates do you want to use. You can use a token in here for a fancy title. Checklist required is going to be that. And then the checklist status has to have a complete flag checked on that to allow it to finish. So there's open checklists and there's complete checklists. If your status isn't a completed status with the flag complete, then the workflow won't let you carry forth.
Any other questions for Albie?
Yes, I have one.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We can,
Yeah,
Anna.
loud and clear. Yep.
When you were doing I think it was a concurrent change, you had the parts that were not the revision changed to a pending status, and you said you did that automatically. How did you do that?
There's a setting that is called. Let me find that setting for you. It's definitely listed in with the ECR side of the world. Yeah,
Okay.
let me find that. I'll send it to you.
Next question from B&W Engineering. Can edits be made to the ECR process? For example, responsible party, target date, etc., after the process has started?
Yes. So that is dependent upon those flags that we were looking at on the ECR status setup table. Lock down and restrict internal updates. So maybe you have a point where you don't want anybody to continue to change what those fields say. You could turn that flag on. But if that flag's off, yeah, world's your oyster. You can change what you need to.
Beautiful. Any other questions for Albie? If you do, remember you can always email him, Albie, ALBIE, at control.m.solutions. Remember, there's no .com and there's no .net, just solutions. So, all right, Albie, you want to bring up our next slide? So in 2 weeks, we're going to have Rebecca Schmidt-Moore bringing up a discussion of subcontracting. So anytime you send your parts out to have something done externally, we're going to cover best practices and methods of subcontracting, configuring, troubleshooting, etc. So we hope to see you there. Albie, once again, as per usual, a great job. I know you love geeking out about engineering changes. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge.
No problem. Happy to help. And if you guys have questions in 4 seconds, Albie at control.m.solutions.